Welcome to the Save Childhood podcast with Jennifer McCarville. Because childhood has changed, but children have not.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Save Childhood podcast.
I'm Jennifer McCarville.
And I'm Nicole Dugan. And today our topic is blocks. All about blocks. Playing with blocks, building with blocks, the importance of blocks, the history of blocks. We're getting into it all.
Yeah, and we are. Because blocks are important.
Yeah, and one thing that I have learned from you, working with you all these years, is it's important to know where things started and how we got to where we are. And so we will start with the history of blocks.
Well, I do love to understand the thing before the thing. Where did it come from? Why is it valuable? I think so much of that comes from what we know, and we say all the time at Save Childhood, because childhood has changed, but children have not. So when we go back to the things that have stood the test of time, that really work well, why we should continue to value them today. And so much of understanding how they came into play in society and what was going on that during those times, I think is just really valuable, because we take these incredible tools like blocks and they just have evolved over time, and sometimes we get away from the depth of genuine experiences that can be had.
Right.
And we know that children need what children need. And what I've learned in researching blocks and the deep value for building and playing with blocks for children is that the benefits are long lasting, and that when we understand the impact they can have, we can make the best decisions. Because again, same thing with childhood, all the bells and whistles and what's new. We always think we have to have the new thing, but we don't necessarily, newer isn't always better. It's not bad. There are lots of things we'll talk about that are, newer than the history of how blocks started. But what I can tell you right now is that having unit blocks, wooden building blocks in your home and in your classrooms is absolutely necessary. It is just like we have dolls and we have fire trucks and we have swings. The thing in childhood that we need to make sure we're giving children in addition to those things is blocks. And I'm talking wooden building blocks, because that's got such huge benefit. So hopefully we'll understand that a little bit at the end of this podcast.
Yeah.
But the history, so kind of the short history, is Friedrich Froebel, who's known as the father of kindergarten. He started the first kindergarten in Germany.
Okay.
And he created a set of what he called gifts. And basically the gifts, the first in the series of gifts, were block building sets. And they were just beautiful. They I wish I had brought some to show for you on YouTube, but I didn't. Sorry. I have some in my office. But so they're in wooden boxes. And he called them gifts because they would take this precious time with the children to sit around the table, to sit on the floor, mostly to sit on the table for presenting these gifts with the children. And it was a gift of learning. And Froebel knew that there could be so much knowledge just naturally embedded through play with children as they interacted with these materials.
And this was in the 1800s.
Yes, kind of the early to mid 1800s. And so this sequence of gifts built on each other. They were small scale. And so the first gift actually is a group of crocheted balls. And you could use that with children as young as infancy. They primary colors and some secondary colors. But the balls had long crocheted loops on them. So you could hang them for infants and children to see, almost like a mobile. Then they could bat at them. Then as they became toddlers, they could use those chains to do other things, to explore them. And of course, observing children, what they learned is, of course, they would swing them themselves. Sometimes they would connect them. They would just explore and find a bunch of different ways to use them. Mm-hmm. Gift 2 was taking a circle, a sphere, well, a sphere, not a circle, a sphere, a cylinder, and a cube. And there were some experiences to share with the children about that. Group 3 was a set of cubes. And each one of these presented in this box. As they were presented, the box would be turned upside down. And then the lid slid out, and then the box would be lifted to reveal. Like, that presentation alone is like, I have something to share with you. And these really intentional presentations of materials, I think, are so valuable for children, because our children have so much just given in, birthdays, so many things all at once. Or when we give them things, just stopping to, I wonder, look at that, tell me about it, what do you notice? Which is such a valuable and constant practice in our school, is to be saying, what do you notice about that? Ooh, what else do you think? I notice that it has a pattern of colors, or I notice, just taking the time to interact with the material and seeing it as a gift of learning. And then each of the gifts would continue to build on conceptual understanding. And there were some pretty famous architects, Frank Lloyd Wright, who actually were schooled in this Froebelian method, and credit that experience of interacting with wooden blocks to their success in life. And so I think that that's a really interesting thing for us to consider.
Yeah.
And so, of course, it doesn't mean that all the children who interact with these gifts will become Frank Lloyd Wright. That's not the point. The point is, it's an extreme example of the knowledge embedded when children interact with wooden blocks.
Okay.
So there was that. Well, so the next phase came from Patti Smith Hill. And Patti Smith Hill was around the 1920 to 1950-ish window. There were two women who played big roles in blocks for children. One of them was Patti Smith Hill, and she created these large-scale hollow blocks, mostly for outdoor play, has been my understanding. But these large scale, she liked that the children could easily pick them up and that they could create worlds that they could enter into. So she found this great value in children using these huge hollow blocks to create, walls to be homes, or pathways to be mazes, but they could create and then get into the play in a really big scale. So that was really cool. And in a good early childhood environment, you're going to see these big hollow blocks in outdoor classrooms, etc. So that's something to look for when you're considering environments for your children. I don't know that, most homes don't have these types of blocks. They tend to be used mostly in an educational setting. However, there's no reason that you couldn't have them in your home.
Right.
Community Playthings is an incredible company. Everything they build for children is amazing. And they now make these blocks that were created by Patti Hill Smith. So Community Playthings, but they definitely make materials for educational settings and larger environments. So so these two women, these two things are kind of evolving at the same time. Patti Smith Hill's creating these hollow blocks. Also, there's a lady named Carolyn Pratt who lives in New York City, who started what is called the City and County School. And she had done woodworking previously, and she was a keen observer of children, and really knowing the learning that she gained from observing children and letting children be children, and how she let that lead her work is such a beautiful thing. And in doing that, she understood the value through the woodworking of building with units that worked together.
Okay, so tell me what you mean by that.
Okay, so she created what we call now unit blocks. And what that means is they are scaled so that you start with a larger unit, and then there are blocks that are cut to half those units, And then there are blocks that are cut to 1/4 of those units, and so forth. So, and we do, if you're on YouTube, you can see, like, for example, you would have one larger block, and then the 2 cubes equal that block. And then you would have 4 that equal this block. Well, what's really interesting about this is that it's very much kind of, you can see a connection with Froebel's gifts, because as Froebel's gifts evolved through the process of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, as those progressed, it was basically taking those units, breaking them down into smaller units, and seeing how smaller units created bigger units, and how all things work together. And so Froebel's, one of his big principles was that seeing what's inside was important. So a lot of what was foundational in the original kindergarten was realizing that there's always something inside that things grow from. So something's inside of us that learning grows from. And so something within a large cube, there are 4 smaller cubes. Within the smaller cubes, there are smaller cubes. And it just builds in that way. And so Carolyn Pratt, with her experience with woodworking, applied a lot of these same principles that Froebel did. And I don't know if she studied Froebel's work or how that happened, if it just happened to be coincidental. However, what we do know is that unit blocks have a very, very important place in the lives of children, in the childhood experience. And so I am on a mission to convince, number one, schools, every classroom should have unit blocks for children through 3rd grade. They should have large sets of unit blocks, and children should be able to build freely with them. And in homes, it would be a lovely thing to have a set of unit blocks that your children could build with. And we have so many building things that are so fun and valuable in many ways, like I mentioned, and we will get into in a little bit. But when we look at what are the foundational needs of children in any environment, we look at the health needs. They need to be fed, they need to be warm, they need to be clothed. Same thing when we're looking at what we provide them in their environment, which is what our store here, that is part of our nonprofit, Root and Twig, is so focused on doing, is the foundational important things that are so open-ended, can be used in so many ways, really nurture intellect and creativity and imagination, that those are the things we're filling our homes with. So we have a lot of other builders, but if we don't have unit blocks, then we're not putting our focus in the right place, in my opinion.
Okay.
So I feel really strongly and about the value of unit blocks, both in the classroom. I mean, let's just talk to our school districts about that. How many of you out there have children in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade in a charter school, a public school, where they have a huge bookshelf of unit blocks and the children are allowed to build with them freely for large blocks of time? I'd be surprised. But man, I'd love to hear from you, because wouldn't that be inspiring? I mean, that's what we hope for. But so talking about block play in general.
Yeah.
And what are the benefits? Why am I so adamant about this topic?
Right.
And why is it important that we sell them in our store and that we have them in our classrooms?
Right.
Let's talk about some of the power that comes from building with blocks. And I know you and I have talked about these things. So, some of the benefits for the children.
Yeah.
You want to share some of those?
Yeah. So it strengthens spatial awareness, problem solving strategies, cause and effect.
Lots of trial and error that helps them figure out how to solve those problems, right?
Planning, thinking through, sequencing.
It's just a natural, deep, powerful mathematical learning.
And what did you say about the research of when the benefits of that show up?
Yes, so there is research that shows that children who in early childhood through 3rd grade, children who spend lots of time building with unit blocks, building and interacting with these things so that they're learning these cognitive skills, these mathematical concepts. They have to have the experience to tie words to, which Jane Healy, if you haven't read any of her work about how the brain works and grows and develops, I believe she's the one that coined that. We need to be creating pictures to tie words to. So when we have experiences, we create these pictures in our mind because we're seeing it firsthand. You can't really give other people those same pictures. We have to have the experience ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So they're building with all these blocks and spending all this time in it. And while they're understanding the concepts deeply, when the time comes for them to apply the mathematical language and knowledge and grow deeper, they soar in middle school. Mm-hmm. And they start to see the benefits of that in middle school, mid to late middle school. And that's a long time for us to wait. And as a society, many of us struggle with waiting for results.
Yeah.
We want to know now. We want to do this, see the kids perform it. They put it on a worksheet, so they must have learned it. Not true. And so you can really feel confident knowing that they're made to learn, that they love to learn, and that play is work. And it is the foundation of mathematical understanding that is so powerful. This is why I know every home, every classroom for sure, needs to not only have these blocks, but they're really the only blocks that you need if it's all you can do. It's really what they need because they're so open-ended.
Right.
They're never going to get tired of building with blocks, just like they never get tired of digging in the sand. They never get tired of swinging. They never get tired of riding trikes. It's just it's a staple,
right,
that we can't overlook. And because those long-term goals and what it's building in their brains, those neuro pathways it's building for mathematical understanding are so incredible and powerful.
Yeah, and it's not only mathematical thinking that block play strengthens. There's a lot of language and literacy development that happens while playing with blocks.
Absolutely. And social skills with the interactions with other children as you navigate, where you are in space and how something's going to go there, something's going to work out here. So you get into the language skills, which of course we can enrich the language with some of the vocabulary that is mathematical. But it also supports storytelling because as they're creating their worlds, they make characters and events that are happening. They recreate things that they've done to make sense of the world. They went to the circus, they start building a circus. So this oral language that comes from this is so profoundly important as well.
Right.
It's a very, very rich and well-rounded opportunity for learning.
Yeah, and a lot of social and emotional learning is at play here as well.
Absolutely. Again, that navigating other people, if you're not building by yourself, but emotionally, how do I navigate? It fell down. I wanted it to look like that. I wanted it to work like that. So building by yourself, it builds a lot of grit and resilience and, that kind of emotional confidence in it can go wrong and I can do it again. And I can tweak it this way and figure out a better way and I can feel good about those challenges. So the social learning is beneficial when you're building with other people, also even on your own.
Yeah.
And that emotional intelligence and literacy that comes from building something, it falling down, tweaking it a little bit, learning how to balance certain things, build a good foundation.
Yeah, and then because block play is so open-ended, it really is strengthening creativity and imagination. And
Absolutely.
So why do we not have them in every home, in every classroom? Everyone needs them.
That's right.
We could wrap that up here, but no, there's
but we
more.
have a few more things to say.
Yeah. So they need time and space to build.
So much time and space. And that's, consistent for children and learning for all of us in learning. And it really, block play gives children something that, again, the digital world cannot give them. It gives them time and focus and engagement, collaboration. It nurtures that imagination and it's joyful. It is joyful to create things that you can use in different ways that you powered.
Yeah.
You know?
So beyond the unit blocks, what are some other blocks that we have in our store or that you would recommend?
Yeah, and other blocks that have taken the place of unit blocks. Yeah, because we tend to look at like the newfangled builders, and there, you know what? I think there is value in just about every builder that you can offer children. I really do. I think my important message in the unit blocks is make sure you have those, and maybe even let those be the first ones. So we carry some cork blocks which have some attributes of the unit blocks that I think are a great starting point for toddlers, because they're cork, because toddlers are made to throw things. They're made to see what happens when, they throw it against a wall, or they throw it against our heads, or that's just how they learn what's going on with the world. So these cork blocks are really fantastic. We do carry those in our store. But again, the hollow blocks, not necessarily, they're not unit blocks. They're a set of hollow blocks, and they have some planes, they have some triangles and different angles of that. And as well as cubes and rectangles and other things. So the hollow blocks, of course, we talked about. Plank building. Dr. Drew has created some plank builders that are fantastic. We met Dr. Drew.
We did meet. I was just thinking that. We met Dr. Drew at Macy's, and it was a pleasure.
He is so delightful and so brilliant and so wise about the value of building with planks. So you could definitely check out Dr. Drew's work, and I encourage you, if you're going to look at plank blocks for your kids, that you check out his website and buy from him if you can. But also Kiva makes some plank blocks, and we actually have some sets for older children in the store that are from the Kiva line that have you make bot mazes, and so they have ways to connect them and ways to change that to add challenges as the children grow. After years and years of building with unit blocks and wooden planks on their own, then taking something like these challenges that these Kiva bot kits offer, they're really, really, really awesome. Building with anything that's a loose part.
Yes.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about loose parts?
Yeah, so
we did an episode on loose parts.
Yeah, so check out that podcast. But an example of things to put out that children might want to build with: slices of wood or stones, sticks.
Yeah, pine cones, acorns, all of those things that have more organic shapes. I call them nature shapes, organic shapes. So we refer to them here as math shapes, which are squares and rectangles and spheres, and organic shapes, because everything has a shape. But when you incorporate those organic shapes into building, then you're getting a whole nother level of learning and problem solving and mathematical computation, right?
And even adding clay in with those natural materials, even just clay and sticks together is a valuable experience. But clay with those natural loose parts is awesome.
Toothpicks with marshmallows and toothpicks with peas and
cardboard and tape.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't offer enough open-ended experiences with building or creating art, or so those are all beautiful things. I think so. Really, really popular magnet tiles, and of course that's the name brand, but Magnet Builders, and that's one company that's really popular. Children love to build with these magnetic tiles, but again, I know they don't replace the wooden unit blocks.
Right.
They just don't.
Right.
No matter how much they love them. But if again, you're going to choose one, you choose the unit blocks.
Okay. And so let's imagine every family, every home has unit blocks and maybe some other blocks as well. How can adults and parents support children in their block play?
Well, first thing is that they have the space to build and the access, the time, the space. So they need an area of floor that, is made for building. And you have to think about what they're building on, because building on a carpet that has any depth of pile is going to be frustrating, because it won't maintain, the balance to give a good foundation. So I think it's always a good idea and of course we like to build on carpet because when those blocks fall, they're loud.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important also to have some large pieces of thin wood that they could put on the carpet to build on.
Sure.
So making sure that kind of thinking about that you have them in baskets or on low shelves, and that you have just the right amount. You have to have enough to build cool things, but not so much that you're so overwhelmed. And you want to make it easy to put them away. I mean, I like in the classroom for the unit blocks to be fairly orderly so the children can see what they want to build with and can be thinking about, oh, I need that size cylinder to match this size cylinder so I can create a bridge with the plank. So we want them to be able to kind of see them, but we don't want it to be painful to put them away. We want to be able to say, okay, all the squares go in this box and all the spheres go in this box and all the, whatever. So you want to plan for the organization of that. So that's good. And then again, I think I mentioned the space and then the access, the time.
Mm-hmm.
Giving them lots of time.
Yeah. And do they always have to pick up their blocks and put them away? Or sometimes you could leave it and maybe they want to revisit it and add to it?
Yeah, I think if you have the opportunity for them to leave it and add to it. But I do think it's very valuable to also put them away
and start
again.
Mm-hmm.
So both. I think a balance of both, and you have to follow your child's personality and their stage of development.
Okay.
So creating these spaces where they have this access, allowing it to be somewhere they could leave those is really, really a perk.
Yeah.
That's a really wonderful thing to be able to offer. Not everyone has that luxury, of course.
True.
But yeah.
Okay, so imagine your child's playing with blocks. They've spent a lot of time doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a parent, how do we help them or extend that or support that? Or I know what you're going to say, okay. Stay out of their way. Right?
I am. I was going to say, isn't it funny that we always think, what do I need to do? And what you need to do is get them some unit blocks,
right?
Get them some plank blocks from Dr. Drew, from, Kiva, and you need to give them time and get out of the way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You need to just observe, just trust that they're made to learn, trust that they can figure it out. And I can tell you that we're seeing fewer and fewer children who truly know how to play. And I think part of that is adults feel like they have to be so involved.
Yeah.
And it's hard to balance that. And we love being with our children and we want to interact with them. So we have to make sure that our first thing is to, after creating the environment, is to notice. Just notice, just observe. Try not to say much at all, but notice what they're doing. And then you get that little feeling inside where I'm doing the right thing. I think that that's going to give you that, look at that. Look at it work. I know we thrive on that when we're really able. We do observe the children deeply here and you see the learning. They can't prove it verbally. It's not appropriate to expect them to put it on a worksheet because we know they're not learning it that way. But when you notice what they're doing with them and just let them do what they do, what they're ready for when they do it. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really important. And then I think the next thing that we do is, to kind of, if you're going to enter into an engagement with them, is that you start naming. So first you notice, just observe. And then maybe you name, like, oh, look, when you made sure that the two sides were the same height, you were able to balance that. So you start gently giving them a little vocabulary. Mm-hmm. Right? Helping them pay attention, maybe pointing out what it was they're doing naturally for months and months and months before we say anything, ideally. Then you start to give them the vocabulary, because I can tell you, just like anything else, too much information will swamp the boat of wonder here. Too much information will destroy the love of learning. They get so overwhelmed because we make what they're doing intrinsically motivated to do becomes our heavy talking point driving points home. We're going to teach. We got to grab those teachable moments. Actually, we need to leave those alone and let them be learning moments. Let the children own them and benefit from them.
Okay.
So first notice, later, then you can start naming a little bit when they need them.
Sprinkle of that.
Just sprinkle.
Yeah.
Just a little sprinkling of
Yeah.
that.
And then, so notice, name, and then
Next, you can start saying, oh, wow, I see that you built that bridge. I wonder if you could build bridges all the way across the rug. So you could name like a challenge, like next. So notice, name, then next is the step. You're going to start giving them an encouragement for the next thing based on what they're doing, right? So something like that. I wonder what you could use to put a curve in your road. So you're giving them that next thought to build on.
Right.
Not the answer, because they are capable of figuring that out. Now, if we promote lazy thinking by giving children answers all the time and showing them how to do everything, that does promote lazy thinking, and their automatic response might be, oh, well, how do I do that? And it's really important to notice that if it becomes a pattern and help them say, oh, I do wonder. Or what could you think of? Or I'm not really sure, but play around with it for a while and let me know what you figure out.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things that say you can take on the next challenge and you can think of ways to solve that problem. And I think there are two reasons children do that. Like I just said before, we give them models. We tell them what to do. We don't give them the freedom to play on their own to figure things out. That's one reason. Another reason is personality. Some people are just wired to be a bit more cautious. They come out, some of them, not many, but they just come into the world being a little more hesitant and being a little more unsure. And that's something to, again, if you're really noticing and observing your children, if that's what you notice, that's a great and important opportunity. That's important work to start saying to them, like, oh, you know what? Anything you choose is going to be okay. So you have to delicately bridge that apprehension they may be naturally inclined to with gentle encouragement for trust yourself. Go for it. So it could be personality. It's not always our fault that our children might be hesitant. So, but we really want to continually, that's where we want to invest our time.
Yeah.
Is making them risk takers, because that's what learning is about, and trusting themselves to try new things.
Yeah. So everyone should have blocks under their tree this year.
Yes, ma'am.
If you don't already have them at home.
And the right kind of blocks.
Unit blocks, wooden blocks.
Plank blocks. They have a lot of freedom in the plank blocks.
Yep.
But definitely wooden unit blocks, basic geometric shapes, and making a plan for making those accessible to the children.
Yeah, and you can also find them at our store, Root and Twig, rootandtwigstore.com.
Yes, you can. But yeah, we want you to find them somewhere.
Yeah.
And then, simplify what we're offering them. And there are just a lot of beautiful opportunities to build on the basic, most necessary materials of the unit blocks, the wooden blocks and planks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us today. Let's keep the conversation going. Comment, like, share.
Follow us on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok.
And YouTube.
Spotify.
Apple Podcasts.
Yeah.
All right. And happy block playing, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us today. To learn more and join the movement, go to savechildhood.org.